On the morning of April 14th, 2020, the seed company that had supplied Warren Galt's certified soybean seed for 11 consecutive years called to tell him his order was on back order. Indefinite delay, supply chain disruption from the processing facility in Illinois. Best estimate for delivery, late May, possibly early June. Warren's optimal planting window in Pemiscot County, Missouri, closed in mid-May. He said, "How indefinite?" The sales rep said, "We are working on it every day." He said, "We are very sorry." Warren hung up. He sat at the kitchen table for a moment. Then he went to the old equipment shed. Not the main machine shed, the older one behind it, the one that had been his father's shop, and that now stored the overflow of implements and the equipment his son Dale had called junk when they were cleaning it out in 2011. In the back left corner of the old equipment shed, on a wooden workbench that had been his father's, sat a Clipper seed cleaner, a 1961 AT, Ferrell Clipper Model M, still connected to the single-phase 220-volt outlet his father Roy had wired in 1963. The machine had a blower fan, 4 interchangeable screens in a shaker tray, a seed hopper on top, and a clean seed spout on the lower right. It weighed approximately 340 pounds and had last been run in 2009 when Roy had cleaned a small batch of wheat seed before he retired from active farming. Warren looked at the machine. He opened the hopper. He looked at the screens. He went to the house and called his father. "Dad," he said. Roy said, "I heard about the supply problem on the radio." He paused. "You're thinking about the Clipper." Warren said, "Does it still run?" Roy said, "I oiled it in March. It runs." Warren said, "Tell me what I need." "Let me tell you about Warren Galt and the seed cleaner, because you need to understand what his son Dale had said about it before you can understand why the machine was still in the equipment shed at all." Warren had taken over the Pemiscot County farm from Roy in 2008, 440 acres of Missouri Booth Heel soybean and cotton ground. Roy had run the farm from 1971 to 2008 with a mixed approach to seed production that Warren had simplified when he took over. Certified seed for soybeans from the commercial supplier ginned and treated cottonseed from the gin. He had sold the farm's certified soybean seed production program to a neighbor in 2009 because the certified seed program required time and record-keeping that Warren's operation did not have capacity for at the scale the program needed to justify itself. The Clipper seed cleaner had come with the farm. Roy had used it for the certified seed program for cleaning wheat seed. In years they ran a winter wheat rotation, and occasionally for cleaning cover crop seed that they harvested on farm. It was an old machine, 1961. But Roy had maintained it because Roy maintained everything that worked. He had replaced the blower belt in 1994 and the shaker cam bearing in 2002, and had oiled the machine every spring regardless of whether it had run that year. In 2011, Dale, Warren's son, then 18, had looked at the Clipper in the old equipment shed and told Warren it was junk. He had said, "Dad, it's 60 years old and it's been sitting here since you sold the seed program. Nobody cleans seed by hand anymore. The extension office says certified seed is more reliable than farm saved anyway." He had said, "It takes up space and it hasn't done anything in 2 years." Warren had said, "Your grandfather maintained it. I'll maintain it." Dale had shrugged. Warren had oiled the machine every spring. The blower bearings, the shaker arm pivot, the screen tray slides, the drive belt, the same way Roy had oiled it. Not because he expected to need it, because Roy had maintained it, and because Warren maintained what Roy had maintained until he had a specific reason to stop. He had not had a specific reason to stop before April 14th, 2020. Let me tell you about Roy Galt and why he had the clipper in the first place. Because understanding Roy's history with the machine explains the maintenance habit Warren had inherited. Roy had bought the clipper in 1963, the year he started the certified soybean seed program on the Pemiscot County farm. The certified seed program was a specific and demanding enterprise, producing soybean seed that met state certification standards, required roguing the fields for off-type plants, maintaining isolation distances from commercial fields, harvesting carefully to prevent mixing, and cleaning and sizing the seed to certification quality. The clipper was the cleaning machine at the center of the program. Without it, there was no program. Roy had run the certified seed program from 1963 to 1987, 24 years, and had found it one of the most consistently profitable enterprises on the farm in years when commodity soybean prices were low. Certified soybean seed commanded a premium of $4 to $8 per bushel over commodity price. When commodity soybeans were at $5, certified seed was at $9 to $13. The premium was real, and the program was profitable. In 1987, the state certification agency had tightened the isolation distance requirements in a way that made the Galt Farms layout less suitable for the program. Roy had discontinued the certified program, but had kept the clipper because the machine worked, and Roy kept things that worked. He had found other uses for it. Wheat seed cleaning when they ran wheat, cover crop seed when they experimented with hairy vetch in the early 2000s, the occasional neighbor who needed a machine, and Roy had said yes. The clipper had run every 2 or 3 years through the period from 1987 to 2009. It had been fully maintained in every year, regardless of whether it ran. He had told Warren in 2008 when he handed over the farm, "Keep the clipper oiled." He had said, "You may not think you need it." He had paused. Clean seed is always worth having the option to make. Warren had kept it oiled. He had done it the way Roy had done it, in the spring with the other equipment, as part of the maintenance round that covered everything in the shed, whether it ran that year or not. He had not had a specific reason to think about why, until April 14th, 2020. Let me tell you about what farm-saved soybean seed means agronomically, because this is the hidden advantage, and it is worth understanding precisely. Soybeans are a self-pollinating crop. Each soybean plant pollinates itself before the flower opens, which means that soybeans do not cross-pollinate with neighboring plants under normal field conditions. This makes soybeans, unlike corn, highly suitable for saving seed from year to year. The seed harvested from a good soybean field will produce plants genetically nearly identical to the parents, without the hybrid breakdown that makes corn seed saving impractical. For non-patented, non-proprietary soybean varieties, farm-saved seed is legal and agronomically sound. A farmer can harvest soybeans from his own field, clean and size them with a seed cleaner to remove damaged seed, off-size seed, and field debris, apply a seed treatment inoculant for rhizobium bacteria if needed, and plant the result the following spring with yield performance comparable to purchased certified seed of the same variety. The variety Warren had been growing for 6 consecutive years was an open-pollinated, non-patented variety well adapted to the Pemiscot County growing conditions. He had 340 bushels of it in the grain bin from the 2019 crop. He had not planned to use it for seed. He had planned to sell it as grain and plant-certified seed from his commercial supplier. The certified seed order was on indefinite back order. He had 340 bushels of his own variety in the bin. He had a Clipper seed cleaner in the equipment shed that Roy had maintained for 57 years. He had his father on the phone explaining the screen sizes and the fan settings. He planted April 28th. Let me tell you about the 4 days with the Clipper, because this is where Roy's maintenance habit and Warren's inherited discipline showed up as actual farm practice. Warren and Roy spent the first day on setup, pulling the screens from the storage rack Roy had built from half-inch angle iron in 1970, washing the screens, checking the perforations against the soybean seed size Warren had measured from the 2019 bin sample. Roy had kept the screen size charts from the 1963 installation manual in a plastic sleeve tacked to the shed wall above the machine. They consulted it. The charts were in Roy's handwriting, with pencil notes from specific years. 1971 variety, used 14/64 round hole screen top, 10/64 round hole screen bottom. 1983 variety, 15/64 top screen, no change on bottom. They were a 48-year record of the decisions Roy had made for specific varieties and conditions. Warren's 2019 variety had not been in Roy's program, but the seed size was close enough to Roy's 1983 variety that they started with those screens and ran the test batch. Roy set the fan speed by feel, holding his palm under the airstream from the blower discharge and adjusting until he got the aspiration that lifted chaff and hollow beans without lifting good seed. Warren had watched him do it. It was not a procedure from a manual. It was the specific calibration of a man who had run this machine for 24 years and knew what the right airflow felt like. The test batch, 50 pounds, came out clean. Small seed and debris in the waste, clean, full-sized beans in the bag. Warren took the cleaned sample to the co-op lab for germination testing. The germination rate came back at 87%. Missouri's minimum standard for certified soybean seed was 80%. His farm-saved seed exceeded the minimum. They ran the full 340 bushels through over 3 days. The Clipper processed approximately 80 to 100 bushels per hour in Roy's calibration. By the end of 3 days, they had cleaned seed sufficient for 280 acres at Warren's seeding rate of 2 bushels per acre with a small reserve. Neighbor Phil Sander had also not been able to get certified seed. He called Warren on April 20th. Warren said, "I'm cleaning my own." Phil said, "I didn't know that was still possible." Warren said, "You need a clipper." Phil said, "I don't have a clipper." Warren said, "Come use mine." Phil brought his seed in on April 22nd and 23rd. The Clipper ran Phil's seed through with the same screens and the same fan setting. Phil's germination came back at 84%. He planted May 1st. 2 farms, 800 combined acres of Pemiscot County soybeans, planted on time in spring 2020, while several other farms in the county waited on backlogged certified seed that arrived in late May and went in under less than ideal conditions as the weather window was closing. Let me tell you about what happens to soybean yield when you miss the planting window, because the economics of being on time are specific and the comparison between Warren's operation and the farms that waited is worth making precisely. In the Missouri boot heel, optimal soybean planting runs from late April through the first 2 weeks of May. After May 15th, yield potential drops at approximately 1 to 2 bushels per acre per day as the planting date moves later. Not because the management is wrong, but because the calendar and the growing season are fixed. Beans planted May 28th instead of May 1st lose approximately 27 to 54 bushels per acre of yield potential. On 300 acres of late-planted soybeans at $2 per bushel, that is $16,200 to $32,400 in lost revenue. The farms that waited for the backlogged certified seed and planted late in 2020 lost that revenue. Warren and Phil, who planted on time with cleaned farm-saved seed, did not lose that revenue. The difference between their outcome and the late-planted farm's outcome was the clipper on Roy's workbench and the 4 days Warren and Roy spent running seed through it. The clipper had cost Roy $340 in 1963. Warren had spent perhaps $80 per year in oil and occasional parts across 12 years of maintenance, about $960 total. The machine had preserved Warren's full yield on 280 acres in 2020, and Phil's on 200 more. At the lower estimate of the yield drag, the two farms together had preserved something in the range of $35,000 in soybean revenue that the late-planted farms lost, against $960 in maintenance across 12 years. Warren called Dale the week after planting was done. Not to say I told you so. He was not that kind of man. He said, "We got in on time." He said, "The old clipper worked." Dale said, "I know. I was there for 2 of the days." Warren said, "You were." Dale said nothing for a moment. He said, "I called it junk." Warren said, "You did." Dale said, "It's not junk." Warren said, "No." He paused. "Oil it in April. You know where the bearing points are now." Dale said, "I'll find them." He found them. He oiled the machine in April 2021. He has oiled it every April since. Let me tell you the last thing, because it is the thing Roy would have wanted both of them to know. Roy had run the certified seed program for 24 years, not primarily as a profit center, though it had been profitable. He had run it because he believed that understanding where your seed came from, being able to evaluate it, clean it, test it, and if necessary produce it yourself, was a form of agricultural sovereignty that no amount of convenient commercial supply could fully replace. A farmer who has never cleaned his own seed is dependent on the commercial seed supply system in a way that a farmer who has cleaned his own seed is not. The dependency is usually invisible. It becomes visible the morning the supply chain call comes in April. He had told Warren, "Clean seed is always worth having the option to make." He had not said, "The supply chain will fail in 2020 and you will need the clipper in April." He could not have said that. He had said, "The option." Having the option to make clean seed, the machine, the knowledge, the maintained capability, is worth preserving regardless of whether the need arrives. The need arriving is not predictable. The option being available is a decision, maintained year by year, that costs 4 hours in the spring and pays back everything in the year the need arrives. Roy kept the option on his workbench for 57 years. Warren kept it for 12 more. Dale will keep it for however many years come after. Subscribe to The Honest Farmer for more stories like this one. Stories of the machines on the old workbench that cleaned seed for 24 years and then sat oiled and ready for 11 more and then ran again when the supply chain failed and the planting window could not wait. Of the fathers who understood that clean seed is always worth having the option to make. Of the sons who called it junk and then oiled it in April without being asked. Hit the bell so you do not miss the next one. Tell me in the comments. Does your farm have a seed cleaner? When did it last run? The Clipper M is on Roy's workbench in the old equipment shed. The screen charts are tacked to the wall above it in the plastic sleeve. The screens are in Roy's angle iron rack. In the grain bin, there are 320 bushels of the 2023 variety, germination tested at 89% in February, labeled and waiting for the spring the call comes again. Roy said, "Clean seed is always worth having the option to make. The option is on Roy's workbench. It is oiled. The planting window will open when it opens. When the call comes, the clipper will be ready. That is not junk. That is a farm that can clean its own seed when it needs to. There is a difference between those two things. The difference has a name. The name is being ready." Let me tell you about the specific economics of what the Clipper did in 2020, because the financial accounting is the honest argument, and it completes the picture. Warren had paid $8.40 per unit for certified soybean seed in 2019, a competitive price from his long-term supplier. On his normal seeding rate of 140,000 seeds per acre, he used approximately 2.3 units per acre, making his certified seed cost approximately $19.32 per acre. On 440 acres, his total certified seed budget was approximately $8,500 per year. The farm-saved seed he cleaned in 2020 cost him the time and operating cost of the Clipper, approximately 4 days of his labor and Roy's, plus electricity, plus the seed treatment inoculant he applied before planting. Total variable cost, approximately $420 for the labor value and supplies. The seed itself had been grown as part of his 2019 crop and would otherwise have been sold as commodity soybeans at approximately $9.10 per bushel. The 340 bushels diverted from commodity sale to seed use represented approximately $3,094 in foregone commodity revenue. Total cost of the Farm Save Seed program in 2020, approximately $3,514 against $8,500 in certified seed he would otherwise have purchased. But the real comparison is not against the certified seed he would have bought if it had been available. The real comparison is against the late-planted certified seed on the farms that waited. Those farms planted in late May, approximately 3 weeks after Warren's April 28th planting. At 1 to 1.5 bushels per acre per day yield drag after the optimal window, 3 weeks represents approximately 20 to 30 bushels per acre of lost yield potential. On 300 acres of representative late-planted operations at $10 per bushel, the late-planted farms left between $60,000 and $90,000 in yield on the table compared to what they would have harvested if they had planted on time. Warren and Phil, who planted on time because of the Clipper, did not leave that yield on the table. The Clipper had made that possible. The 12 years of maintenance at approximately $80 per year had made the Clipper possible. The 24 years of Roy's certified seed program had made the knowledge possible. Roy keeping the clipper after the program ended had made the machine possible. Warren maintaining the machine had made April 2020 possible. Each step back in that chain was a decision made by a specific person with incomplete knowledge of what the next link in the chain would need. Roy had not known in 1988, when he kept the clipper, that a supply chain disruption would make it essential in 2020. Warren had not known in 2008, when he first oiled it, that Dale would be running seed through it alongside him 12 years later. None of them had needed to know. Each had needed only to maintain what the previous person had maintained and to not stop before having a specific reason to stop. Dale had been given a reason in April 2020. He had oiled the machine in April 2021. Let me tell you about what Roy had understood about the certified seed program that goes beyond the financial, because Roy had not run the program for 24 years primarily for the premium over commodity price. Though the premium was real and the program was profitable, he had run it because he believed that understanding seed production from the inside was a form of agricultural knowledge that could not be replaced by purchasing from someone who had the knowledge. When you buy certified seed, you are buying the output of a process that someone else controls. The germination, the sizing, the variety integrity, the treatment, all of it is handled by the supplier and delivered to you in the bag. This is efficient and it is reliable in normal conditions. What it is not is knowledge. A farmer who has bought certified seed for 20 years knows how to buy certified seed. A farmer who has cleaned his own seed for 20 years knows what good seed looks like, how the cleaning machine calibrates to different varieties, what germination means in the context of field conditions, and how to evaluate a seed lot before it goes into the ground. Roy had that knowledge from 24 years of running the program. Warren had absorbed some of it by watching without fully practicing it. Dale had none of it in April 2020. He had watched Roy calibrate the clipper fan by palm feel and had asked why Roy didn't use the settings chart. Roy had said, "The chart tells you the range. The feel tells you where in the range is right for this seed today." He had said, "You cannot get the feel from the chart. You get it from running the machine." Dale had run the machine for 2 of the 4 days. He had not gotten 24 years of feel from 2 days. He had gotten something, the beginning of the specific sensory knowledge that comes from doing rather than watching. He had gotten the beginning. Warren had told him, "Oil it every April." Not, "You now understand everything my father understood." Oil it every April. The knowledge builds from the oiling, from the cleaning, from the testing. The knowledge builds the same way the cistern fills, from accumulation, from many small contributions, from doing the maintenance even when it does not seem necessary, until the year it is necessary and you are ready. That is what the clipper represents, not a machine that runs once every decade when the supply chain fails. A practice, the practice of maintaining the option, testing the seed in February, keeping the reserve in the bin, running the machine in the years when the supply chain delivers fine, and running it again in the years when it does not. The practice does not require predicting which years are which. It requires only doing it every year without requiring a reason that the current year provides. Roy had done it every year. Warren had done it every year. Dale will do it every year. The option will be on the workbench. The bearing points will be oiled. The screen charts will be in the plastic sleeve on the wall. Whatever spring the call comes, the clipper will be ready. Let me tell you about the summer of 2009, the 1 year between the end of Roy's direct involvement and Warren's first solo maintenance of the clipper, because it is the year when the inheritance could most easily have broken and did not. Warren had taken over the farm in 2008. Roy had maintained the clipper through the fall of 2008 before stepping back. In the spring of 2009, Warren had done the maintenance round alone for the first time, going through the main machine shed first, then the old equipment shed, hitting each piece of equipment on the maintenance list Roy had left him. The clipper was on the list with a note: blower bearings, shaker pivot, screen tray slides, drive belt. Oil annually, inspect belt tension, check fan blade for cracks. Warren had found the maintenance straightforward. The machine was in good condition. Roy had always kept it in good condition. He had oiled it, checked the belt, made a note in the farm maintenance log. He had put the oil can back on the shelf. He had also, that spring of 2009, sold the certified soybean seed production program to the neighboring farm. The clipper's primary purpose on the farm disappeared in 2009. Warren was left with a machine that had no current use and required 4 hours of spring maintenance every year to keep ready for a use it was not currently serving. He had thought about this. He had sat at Roy's workbench in the old shed and looked at the machine and thought about whether there was a reason to keep oiling it. He had thought about what Roy had said: clean seed is always worth having the option to make. He had thought about the fact that the machine worked and that Roy had kept it after the certified program ended in 1987 and had used it occasionally for other cleaning jobs and had always been able to point to a use for it. He had decided to keep maintaining it, not because he had a specific plan for it, because Roy had maintained it and it worked, and Warren had not yet found a specific reason to stop. He had written in the maintenance log: Clipper M, serviced spring 2009. Sold certified seed program to neighbor. Will continue maintaining clipper per Roy's schedule. No current primary use. That entry had sat in the maintenance log for 11 years with no update except the annual spring service note. Then the April 2020 note. Clipper M ran 4 days, April 16th to 19th. 340 bushels cleaned for planting. 87% germination. 0 mechanical failures. Supply chain failure for certified seed confirmed value of maintaining machine. Will keep 1 year's seed stock as backup going forward. The 11-year gap between the decision to keep maintaining it and the event that justified the decision is the whole argument. You cannot know in 2009 what 2020 will require. You can only know in 2009 that you will not be able to make clean seed in 2020. If you stop maintaining the machine in 2009, the decision to maintain is not made with knowledge of the future need. It is made with the understanding that future needs cannot be predicted and that the cost of maintaining the option is low relative to the cost of not having it when the need arrives. Roy had made that calculation in 1987 when the certified program ended and kept the machine for 21 more years. Warren had made it in 2009 when the program was sold and kept it for 11 more. The calculation comes out the same way. 4 hours per year is less than the value of the option. Dale now makes the calculation every April. It comes out the same way it has always come out. Let me also tell you about the one afternoon in October 2020 that completes the Dale arc, because it is the scene where the inheritance fully passes. Warren had been going through the farm maintenance records in October, after the harvest was in and the season was done, updating the log for the year. He had found Dale in the old equipment shed when he came through on the maintenance round. Dale was at Roy's workbench. He had the Clipper's blower housing open, the housing that covered the fan blade and the blower bearings, and was inspecting the fan blade for the crack check that Roy's maintenance note had specified. He had a flashlight in one hand and his other hand running along the aluminum fan blade edges, checking for the hairline cracks that develop in aging aluminum under vibration loading. Warren had stopped in the shed door. He had watched for a moment. Dale was doing the check correctly, working from the blade root outward, looking at the leading edge where fatigue cracks initiate, checking the hub mounting holes for elongation. Dale had looked up. He said, "The blades are clean, no cracks." Warren said, "Good." Dale said, "Roy's note said to check them every 3 years." Warren said, "Yes." Dale said, "It's been 3 years since the last check." Warren said, "I know." He paused. "That's why I was coming to do it." Dale said, "I found the maintenance schedule in the log." He had Roy's original list, the one Roy had written for Warren in 2008, open on the workbench beside him. He said, Roy had everything on here. Warren said, Roy wrote down everything. Dale was quiet for a moment. He said, he ran this machine for 24 years, and then he wrote down how to maintain it for whoever came after. Warren said, yes. Dale said, and you maintained it for 12 years without using it? Warren said, yes. Dale said, and then I called it junk. Warren said, you did. Dale was quiet. He said, I'm going to add a note in the log about the blade check. He paused. Date and result. He paused, like Roy would have done. Warren said, that is what he would have done. Dale wrote the note in the log. He put the housing back on the clipper. He put Roy's maintenance schedule back on the workbench. He oiled the machine in April 2021, the blower bearings and the shaker pivot and the screen tray slides and the drive belt, the same 4 points Roy had specified in 1963 and maintained for 57 years, and Warren had maintained for 12 more. The clipper is ready. The screens are in Roy's rack. The charts are in the plastic sleeve on the wall. The maintenance log has Dale's handwriting in it now alongside Warren's and Roy's. 3 handwritings, 59 years, 1 machine on 1 workbench. Roy said, clean seed is always worth having the option to make. The option is oiled. The option is ready. That is not junk. That is the specific form of agricultural sovereignty that takes a generation to build and 4 hours in April to keep.